There's something eerie about Big Bend. Maybe it's the silence, so wide and deep it feels like you're standing on another planet. Maybe it's the isolation, where you can hike for days and never see another soul. Or maybe it's something else. Join us for today's installment of Haunted Parks, Big Bend National Park in Texas. Welcome to Morbid Outdoors, the podcast that ventures deep into the shadows of the wild. Here, we unravel the mysteries of missing persons, explore spine-chilling legends, and share the most morbid stories that nature has to offer. From the depths of the dense forest to the highest mountain peaks, we'll uncover the secrets that lie hidden in the great outdoors. Join us as we navigate the eerie, the unexplained, and the terrifying. So if you dare, grab your gear and let's embark on a journey into the unknown. This is Morbid Outdoors. Hello, everyone. My name is Elise, and I'm your host, and thank you so much for tuning in today. Now, I sat down to record, and I just felt so happy that I'm recording a Haunted Parks. These are such a nice way to break up some of the really heavy stuff that we talk about here on Morbid Outdoors. And so Haunted Parks is meant to be a little bit lighter, a little bit more spooky, and a little bit less serious. And so I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you being a supporter. You don't know how much it means to me. I have nothing really personal to report, but I do want to ask you. I've asked before, but now that I have a few more of you here supporting me, I want to ask again. So some of you like hearing about my personal life or things I do like hiking or travels, and some of you don't like it, and both are totally fine. However, if you like it, or even if you don't like it, I'm going to put a poll on today's episode on Spotify. I would like for you to let me know if you want it still at the beginning of the episode or if that should be at the end of the episode. So I appreciate any information and suggestions I get from you guys. And let's just dive into today's case. Or it's not really a case, but it's Haunted Parks. I have never been to Big Bend National Park. It is definitely on my list, but it is so remote. It is one of the national parks that you have to make a entire trip for. You can't really see other places when you're there because it's kind of remote. I mean, there might be one other place down there, but it's so desolate and isolated that this national park is usually a lot less visited than other parks like Yellowstone and Grand Teton and even ones like Death Valley. So let's talk about some negative reviews that I saw about Big Bend. Our first negative review says, visitors are critically acclaiming this park due to its, quote, beautiful scenery, but little will anyone know that the experience is very disappointing successfully. Do not, in all caps, believe what any positive talkers say. It does nothing but disappoints you successfully and fails to leave even a little bit of an impression. That person did not have a good time at Big Bend. Daniel said, they should call this place Big Desert. I'm going to tell the truth. This place is not worth your money if you have to pay to get in. It's just a big desert. Ellie says, brown, dry, and dusty. Stayed in 2 campgrounds and saw most of the park. What a boring place. Our other national parks are so much prettier and more interesting. I don't plan on ever coming back. Ellie, I don't think Big Bend would care if you don't visit again. Someone else said, was indeed big, but also hot, in all caps. They should call it Big Hot Bend. 1 star. These are the ones that crack me up. Jason says, it's hot. It's dangerous. People die out there. Please don't go out there and screw up my favorite vacation place. Obviously, Jason's kind of being funny. So we are talking about Big Bend in Texas. And yes, it is a desert. And yes, it is hot. And yes, it is dangerous. I love it when people suggest alternative names for national parks because sometimes it's like, yeah, would that make more sense? Maybe, but it's also hilarious. So, tonight, today, whatever time you're listening to this, we're heading into the far reaches of West Texas to explore one of the country's most desolate and haunted national parks. This is Big Bend, where the desert doesn't forget, and sometimes it doesn't let go either. So let's talk about the background of Big Bend National Park. Like I said earlier, it's located in West Texas and it borders Mexico. The park has national significance as the largest protected area of the Chihuahuan Desert topography and ecology in the United States. And it was named after a large bend in the Rio Grande/Rio Bravo. So that's why it's Big Bend, not Big Desert. It was established June 12th, 1944. It's just over 800,000 acres, and it doesn't get a lot of visitors. Only about 460,000 were last reported in 2019. It protects more than 1,200 species of plants, more than 400 species of birds, 56 species of reptiles, and about 75 species of mammals. Some of you might know this, but Big Bend offers a lot of outdoor recreation, such as scenic drives and programs led by the Big Bend Park Rangers and stargazing because there is like no light pollution out here. So the stargazing is next level. The area has a rich cultural history from archaeological sites dating back nearly 10,000 years to more recent pioneers, ranchers, and miners. The Chisos Mountains are located in the park and are the only mountain range in the entire U.S. to be fully contained within the boundary of a national park. That is a very fun and interesting fact, honestly. Geological features in the park include sea fossils and dinosaur bones, as well as volcanic dikes. In geology, a dike is a sheet of rock that is formed in a fracture of a pre-existing rock body. Dikes can be either magmatic or sedimentary in origin. During the early historic period, before 1535, several indigenous groups were recorded as inhabiting the Big Bend. The Chisos Indians were a loosely organized group of nomadic hunters and gatherers who probably practiced limited agriculture on a seasonal basis. The origin of the Chisos Indians is not known. Linguistically, they were associated with the Conchos Indians of the northern Chihuahua and northwestern Coahuila. They spoke a member of the Utso Aztecan, a language family whose speakers ranged from central Mexico to the Great Basin of the United States. Bet you didn't know this, but Big Bend has several hot springs, including the springs in the Hot Springs Historic District. The main hot springs is called Hot Springs. It is known as the Boca Diaz Hot Springs and the Langford Hot Springs. Hot Springs is on the National Register of Historic Places. The hot springs were the first major tourist attraction in the Big Bend area before the national park was even established. In 1909, J.O. Langford began developing the springs to bring in tourists and, of course, to get money, exploit the nature and get the money. So that was a huge draw for people way back when to visit because of the natural hot springs. But Big Bend's primary attraction is its hiking and backpacking trails. Particularly notable among these are the Chimneys Trail, which visits a rock formation in the desert, the Marufo Vega Trail, a loop trail that passes through the scenic canyons on the way to and from the Rio Grande, the South Rim Trail, which circles the high mountains of the Chisos, and the Outer Mountain Loop Trail in the Chisos, which incorporates parts of the South Rim Loop, descends into the desert along the Dodson Trail, and then returns to the Chisos Basin, completing a 30-mile loop. Lots and lots and lots of backpacking. And I'm gonna go on a guess and say backpacking is most popular here in the winter months when the weather would be a lot more mild in Big Bend. Now, this park administers 118 miles or 190 kilometers of the Rio Grande for recreational use. There are professional river outfitters that provide tours of the river, but the use of personal boat is permitted. But you have to get, special permits basically. And you can use a personal boat, but there are a lot of commercial things. So, unless you're going to take your boat to Big Bend to go in the water, you could just skip that haul and just go on one of the private outfitters. And that would be a really fun tour. I've done a similar thing in Taos, New Mexico, whitewater rafting on the Rio Grande, and it was just so beautiful. This is another weird fact, but in June 2009, the Department of Homeland Security began treating all float trips as trips that had left the country and required participants to have an acceptable form of ID, such as a passport, to re-enter the country. That is crazy. I get it, but also, if you're an American and you're going on a float trip and you have to have your passport with you, that is honestly ridiculous, because when I was in Canada last year, I did a similar thing and I didn't need my passport. I don't know, I just think that that's kind of a silly rule, but some of you might not agree, and that's totally fine. Now, there are only 5 paved roads in the entire national park. It is very remote, very rugged, and it's wilderness. I mean, what else can I say? There's no roads. It is straight up wilderness. In 2012, the park was designated as an International Dark Sky Park by the International Dark Sky Association. The association also recognized the park with its gold tier designation as free from all but the most minor impacts of light pollution. Measurements made by the National Park Service show that Big Bend has the darkest skies in the contiguous United States. Darkest skies. That's crazy. Thousands of stars, bright planets, and the Milky Way are visible on clear nights. But all of that is not why you are here. So what makes Big Bend spooky? Well, let's start with a lot of deaths, including the most famous of the fallen, Chief Alsate. And, I Googled this. I don't know how to say it, okay? Alsate, Alsate, the last leader of the Chisos Apaches, who was killed by a Mexican firing squad in 1882. Now, this is a quote from Andrea Lankford. She's the author of Haunted Hikes. They say that when his body hit the ground, the mountains shook. Soon after his death, Alsate appeared to the Leonicio Castillo, who had betrayed the chief to the Mexican officials and terrified him so badly that Castillo himself vanished. According to the legend, Alsate then made his impression literally on the mountains. If you view the Chisos from the north, you can see the outline of his face etched into the peaks and valleys. Some say he's also responsible for the big Marfa lights. Sorry, not for the big ones. The Marfa lights, the glowing orbs that are regularly seen in the desert northwest of Big Bend. And that's interesting because I'd heard of the Marfa lights before, but I never heard of this story. So it's very interesting. There's even a ghost bull. They call it the spectral bull, and it apparently inhabits Big Bend. In 1891, Finney Gilliland and Henry Powell fought over the coveted animal, which had no brand, so it wasn't branded, didn't belong to anybody yet. And Powell died in the ensuing gunfight for this bull. Shortly after, a Texas Ranger shot and killed Gilliland. Following the deaths of both would-be owners, the bull was finally branded, and they branded it with the word murder. The phantom bull now roams Big Bend as a harbinger of death and murders to come. That is so creepy, so creepy. And I did want to call attention to the name. All contributed to the name Chisos, which is thought to derive from the Spanish hechizos, meaning bewitchments or enchantments, or from the Castilian chis, which is clash of arms, due to reports from early visitors that they heard ghosts of Spanish soldiers. So even the name of the mountain range has spooky origins. And there's one more ghost story of Big Bend. Now, those hot springs that I mentioned earlier, they were a thriving wellness center in the early 1900s. And the proprietor, Joseph Langford, he built pools and a few humble buildings at the site on the Rio Grande by the naturally heated hot water pools. They're warmed by geothermal activity and come out at around 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is like the equivalent of a hot tub. For Langford, this was the perfect place to open his hot springs wellness business, promising all kinds of cures for any ailment under the sun. Some might call him an early entrepreneur, while others might consider him like a snake oil salesman or conman. But either way, the success allowed him to build a business in the area around the springs. And at one point, it even had its own post office. The business became part of the new Big Bend National Park in 1944, but it was shut down after, and the bathhouse was removed by the Park Service in the early 1950s. Now, only a few walk walls remain, but fortunately, you can still sit and soak in the remains of the former resort. And if you're wondering, yes, ghost sightings have been reported here. There's been reports of shadow figures, strange sounds, and a sudden chill in the air. And these are things that visitors experience and they report to rangers. And the fact that you're soaking in a hot springs and you feel a sudden chill is honestly, I don't know how you would explain that scientifically because you're in hot water and if you suddenly get cold, creepy. There are lots of myths and legends surrounding the hot springs. I'm going to let you guys think what you want about that, but I think it's kind of neat and interesting to think about. But it's kind of like a ghost town hot springs. So interesting for sure. And this is not the only place on the Rio Grande that has hot springs like this. There are some in New Mexico as well that I have soaked in before. Another creepy thing in Big Bend is abandoned mines. While you're in Big Bend National Park, check out the Mariscal Mine. It was once an active mercury mine in a very remote area of the park. Unfortunately, it was laborious work and the working conditions were unsafe for the miners, which led to many of them suffering from respiratory failure. Because of those issues, the mine closed in 1943, but a few buildings are still standing in which visitors are welcome to walk around. It is completely abandoned, and it's hard not to think about the men who worked here every single day. You have to take a primitive road to get there, and you'll need high clearance because it is that remote. It's a 20-mile drive, but it'll take you about 90 minutes each way because the road is so rough. And if anybody knows, driving on a rough dirt road for a mile is like 10 miles on a nice maintained road. It takes forever. Now, in one of my cryptid episodes, we did talk about the howling spirit of Bruja Canyon, but I want to talk about her again. So this is a very remote park, and if you're a fan of giving yourself goosebumps, you'll want to head to the area that's called Bruja Canyon, and in Spanish, Bruja means witch. Hikers have reportedly heard wailing here, and there were also reports of apparition sightings. Since the area here is along the Mexico-US border, it's no surprise that there are plenty of stories about who the spectral cries belong to. One of the eeriest theories is that the sounds are the ghostly wails of a Native American woman who drowned her children in the river canyon to prevent capture by the settlers moving into the area. If you want to hear the ghostly cries for yourself, go to Bruja Canyon at night. Apparently, all you hear is a woman screaming like bloody murder. And apparently people have seen her too. So some people think she's the ghost of a witch, while others think that she is the ghost of someone that had to murder her children to prevent capture. And obviously that's just a legend, but I don't know, it might have happened. No one really knows. You can also camp in an abandoned town. The town of Terlingua, Abajo. It was a farming community that was enveloped with the creation of the national park. Campsites here are extremely primitive. There's no facilities, no shade, and no water, and they sit next to walls of the old buildings. There are still some relics and belongings of the previous residents littered around the campsites. That is so creepy. I think that this would be somewhere that I would camp because I think it's really cool to camp where a ghost town was, but I think I'd also be creeped the heck out, honestly. Big Bend also has a mysterious tomb for someone named Juan de Leon, and he was buried in the park. There's a rather morbid reason that this is his final resting place. His body was too decomposed by the time his body was found, and his remains couldn't be moved. He died in 1932, but that's about all that anyone knows. There are a few theories around his death, and it's clear he died from a gunshot wound, but it's unclear why or by whom. And you can actually go see his grave. You would want to take the undeveloped Old Ore Road about 10 miles north of Camp de Leon. So Big Bend, another reason it's creepy or haunted or spooky, whatever. There are graves from people that were murdered and no one knows anything about them. So very sketch. I talked about the Marfa lights earlier, and I want to talk about them a little bit more now. This is one of the most talked about mysteries that Big Bend has, actually. You can spot these unexplained lights just east of Marfa, Texas, but people have also witnessed them in and around Big Bend National Park. Now, some say these floating orbs are shape-shifting witches, but others believe that it's a result of underground lightning storms, which I've never heard of before. Others just love to live in the mystery of it all, and like I said earlier, they might even be from that Chief Alzate who was murdered by the Mexican firing squad. These unexplained lights that sometimes appear in shades of blue and red, but mostly are a yellow-white color, they've appeared in the night sky at unexpected times. So if you ever go and you see them, consider yourself extremely lucky because not everyone that goes gets the chance to witness this bizarre mystery. And now the real reason you guys are all here today, haha, JK. Probably the biggest mystery within the park, besides the Marfa lights, and who knows, they could be tied into this as well, are UFOs and strange objects that seemingly fall from the sky on a daily basis. Now, I know that we now call UFOs UAPs, but I'm going to call them UFOs because I think that's what most people know them as. If you can imagine, since Big Bend has the darkest skies in the contiguous United States, there is some shit to see in the skies. UFOs are often seen darting around the park's sky, and since the 1800s, people living in this area have also been victims to strange objects falling from the sky, such as hot stones that have destroyed property and killed livestock. Big Bend National Park is also known as the Zone of Silence due to the extreme electrical failures in aircraft, automobiles, and electrical equipment, and radio waves. I don't know why it's always the desert, but it's always the desert where, I don't know, UFOs visiting, like in the, there's a basin over here in Utah, like near like Skinwalker Ranch, lots of UAPs, lots in Arizona, lots in New Mexico, lots in Texas. I don't know. I guess the aliens must love the American Southwest. And here's a little conspiracy theory for you. I found this little story about Big Bend, and I wanted to include it because I do think it is very strange. In 1962, two men were exploring some of the park's caves, and in one, they discovered a broken ancient tablet on which strange symbols had been written. The men notified a park ranger about their discovery because, like, whoa, this is really interesting. It's really weird. They may be thought it was an indigenous artifact that needed to be protected, so they did the right thing by alerting the Park Service. However, the ranger took the tablet with him to be studied by specialists, but when the men called the ranger station a few weeks later to ask about the tablet, They were informed that the ranger to whom they had initially talked to no longer worked at that park, and the station claimed they had no knowledge of the ancient tablet to which the men were asking about. I don't know. I think one of two things. The ranger thought, hey, this is going to be worth a lot of money. I'm going to quit. I'm not going to tell anyone about the tablet. I'm going to sell it on the black market and it'll be fine. Or, and this is a conspiracy theory that I just am making up right now, ranger knew something about this and turned it over to a higher up somewhere, who knows, and then got transferred somewhere else or was fired because they wanted to keep it hush hush. So I don't know if you know anything about the national park theory. Maybe this might fit in somewhere in that conspiracy theory. I think we've all heard today that Big Bend National Park is a place of extremes. Scorching sun by day, bone-chilling silence at night. It's beautiful, yes, but it's also very unsettling, because once the sun drops behind the canyons and the stars spill across the sky, that's when things start to shift. That's when things feel too quiet. And when people start hearing things. Was it just the wind over the ridgeline? A trick of the desert light? Or is there something truly out there, wandering the trails long after the living have gone? We may never know, but if you find yourself hiking in Big Bend after dark, keep your headlamp charged, watch the shadows, and maybe don't go alone. Thanks for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious, and trust your instincts in the wild. As always, recreate responsibly, and remember, sometimes the great outdoors aren't always great. Thanks for listening to Morbid Outdoors. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, make sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform. It's free, easy, and it helps us out immensely. When you subscribe, you get updates on our latest episodes, and it also boosts our visibility, making it easier for other curious souls to find us. Another great way to support Morbid Outdoors is by leaving us a review. Whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, a quick review helps us know what you love about the show. Find us on Instagram and Facebook at Morbid Outdoors Podcast. You can email us case suggestions and your campfire stories at morbidoutdoorspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks so much for the support, and I'll see you next time.